morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we've got, well, a bunch of stuff that we need to have a look at from Super Electric Breaker. A bunch of new cards that we need to have a look at. So let's start off with the final EX that needs to be revealed from the set. It is Durant, not one of my favourite Pokemon, but a potentially very good new EX. We've got 190 HP, but it is a basic EX, so that's understandable. And we've got a rather nice ability here, whereby on your turn, when you play this card from your hand, you may use this ability, your opponent discards a top card of their deck. And it's only one card, don't get me wrong, it's not amazing. But firstly, it is just automatic mill when you play it. And secondly, sometimes this can work. Like, we all know there are decks out there that play Pidgeot V, for instance, to use its ability to loop it, so you essentially never deck out. So the theory here is you draw Pidgeot V, it's the only card in your deck. Then you play it to the bench. Then you use its ability to put it back in the deck, and it becomes the only card in the deck, so that at the start of your next turn you can draw that Pidgeot V, and then play it down and round we go. That's how Pidgeot V works. Well, here, your opponent's got one card in deck and it's Pidgeot V, and you're like, hat burned, and they lose that card in deck. Not sure if it's worth playing it for the ability just to essentially play it and try and deck your opponent out. But even just getting rid of one random card can sometimes be the one card they desperately need. So I'm just saying, it's not amazing, but there is a little bit of potential here. But then we've also got Grass Double Colorless, 120 damage, plus 30 more for each prize card your opponent has taken. To answer the obvious question first, 2. When your opponent has taken 2 prize cards, you are hitting 180 and getting a one-hit KO on Charizard. If your opponent's taken 1 prize card, you'll hit 150, double weakness is 300. You will not be getting a one-hit KO on Charizard. So it's 2 colorless energy and a colored. It can be a very good attacker in the late game. It's hitting a decent weakness, and you get to trash the top card of your opponent's deck when you play it. I'm just saying there's a little bit of potential here. But we've got a lot of other cards to get through, so let's do a little bit of a speed round through the remaining cards in the set. We have got ourselves an Executor, not a Alolan, just regular. For a single grass energy, you flip a coin for each energy attached to both active Pokemon and deal 60 damage for each heads. Now, you can punish your opponent for attaching lots of energy, or you can whack a bunch of energy on yourself. Yes, you're incredibly flippy and it could backfire, don't get me wrong. But oh, ladies and gentlemen, the potential here is awesome. So I'm just saying, if you want a Stage 1 single energy potential for ridiculous damage, this might be your guy. I like this one very, very much indeed. Also in the new set, we have got a full suite of Tauros. Paldean Tauros, we've got a bunch of them. Now, the one people seem to be getting most excited about is the water one. 2 colorless energy. If your opponent's active is a stage 2, you may put 2 energy attached to it back into your opponent's hand. And actually, this could be kind of cool. Once again, this card works against Charizard quite nicely. They've got 2 energy on, you put them back into their hand. They need to attach 2 more in order to be able to attack, and they're not always going to be able to do so. Dragapult nowadays isn't playing much energy acceleration. They tend to just be relying on Sparkling Crystal, so get rid of that. They have to manually attach 2 energy onto that Pokemon to get an attack rolling, put them back into their hand. They might have to take a turn or 2 off of attacking, during which point you run away with the game. Seems a little bit awkward, but it is a basic Pokemon that can do this for a double turbo energy, and that the damage is 30 damage. No one really cares about the damage. Damage isn't good enough. What is good enough, however, is that you're getting that energy away from them, and that's what really matters. Looking at the other couple of Tauros here, I quite like the fire one. It's 90 damage, but if your opponent's active is a stage 1, it does 180. Not against EXs unless you're hitting for weakness, but non-EX stage 1s, this will wreck all of them for free energy, which I don't think is bad. And then we got the fighting one here, free energy, 90 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, the Pokemon that was hit by this attack cannot attack. But it's basic Pokemon. So you hit a basic, and they can't attack next turn. Cool. It's just a way of shutting down basic decks. Problem is, it doesn't really work great because they can just switch out of it, so yeah. By the way, half of these cards I've not seen any other translations of, but I feel fairly confident in mine, so I'm going to roll with it. Moving on, we've got ourselves a new Dedenne. Single colorless energy, put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. Is it amazing? No, not claiming it's amazing, but I am claiming that we all used Regieleki, for instance, which got a trainer card from your discard pile back into your hand. And if people are willing to use Regieleki to get a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand, why would they not use this to get a trainer card from your discard pile back into your hand? Just saying. We did it before. We could happily do it again. We've already proven that this is an attack that people will actually use, and I think that is incredibly relevant. Speaking of incredibly relevant cards that people might wish to play in control decks, how about Rotom? And apparently I've gone out of order now. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It just happened. Rotom here, for a single lightning energy, does 20 damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Not terrible if they put lots of energy on or are weak, but that's not why we're playing this. Also, for a single lightning energy, your opponent reveals their hand and discards all items and all tools. This card is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the obvious thing here is that your opponent cannot keep a rare candy in their hand to try and evolve into their stage 2, and if they do keep a rare handy to try and evolve into their stage 2, well, you just get rid of it. But it's all items and all tools. It's Pokemon search. It's everything. It's getting the energy switch away from Regidrago so they're not able to power up their attacker, for instance. There's so many different uses for this. I could do a whole kind of 20, 30-minute video on this card alone. But there's been too much news this weekend. I really don't have time. I'm sorry. The point is, this is a redonkulous card, and it's single energy on a basic. So all you need to do here is just go second, and then turn 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, you get rid of all of your opponent's items and tools. Oh, what if my opponent tries to keep their hand free of items and tools? Yeah, we've got like a million cards out there like Iono and Judge right now that will make your opponent shuffle their hand, put it on the bottom of their deck or into their deck, and get a new hand. So don't worry about your opponent trying to keep a hand clear of items and tool cards. Nah, mate. Make them shuffle their hand or get rid of it or whatever. Make them take a new hand, and then they can't try and protect their hand. Oh, I don't adore this card. I hate this card. This is the kind of card that's going to ruin my day on more than one occasion. But I can appreciate that the power of this card is immense. We're looking at some good cards in this video. This might be among the best of them. Yeah, keep an eye out for this one. This one's pretty big. There's also a couple of fire cards I think we should have a look at. There is a Victini that's got an ability that says your fire Pokemon, your evolution fire Pokemon, I should say, do an extra 10 damage. Although I should say only specifically to your opponent's active, but still, doing an extra 10 damage seems like a little bit of a win. I think this is another card that could see a bunch of play. Remember, it's only evolution fire Pokemon that deal an extra 10 damage, but that extra 10 damage and the fact that it can stack, I'm just saying, there are some fire decks out there that are absolutely going to love it. Like, for instance, Center Scorch, a card I've not seen anybody talking about, but I'm sorry, I adore this Center Scorch. Free energy 80, nobody cares, but single energy 130. Now, it also does 30 to each of your bench Pokemon, which I admit is far from ideal, But there's always Pokemon out there that do extra damage for each damage counter on the particular Pokemon. Think things like Koraidon EX, for instance, which, not for nothing, 230 HP, no weakness, 20 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. That seems like it could be kind of fun. Or something like the Paldean Tauros, the fighting type, which can hit a pretty good weakness. Or the Paldean Tauros, the water type, which can hit a different weakness. Or the Paldean Tauros, the fire type, which you honestly don't really need because you're already hitting the fire type weakness with Center Scorch. But you see where we're going with this. I don't mind bench damage because I'm going to just play a bunch of Pokemon that don't care about bench damage. I like this Center Scorch. I'm going to be testing it. And I'm telling you right now, Stage 1, single energy, 130 damage, you will get a bunch of prizes before your opponent gets rolling. It's a bit of a shame it's not the best weakness to be hitting right now, but I love this Center Scorch. The problem is you can't really use it with Victini because you attack 3 times and all your Victini go down, but ignore that for a moment. I love this Center Scorch. I also am quite partial to fighting type Pokemon, and we've got a couple of those that we need to have a quick gander at right now. Like, for instance, Annihilate. Now, it is a Stage 2, and I admit that it being a Stage 2 is a little bit of a pain. I'm sorry. However, it's got one attack that I don't really care about. Like, not even a little bit here. Because it's single energy 130 and this Pokemon is confused. No. But 2 energy, both active Pokemon are knocked out. Now, I don't really love getting a Stage 2 and then knocking it out. That's not ideal if we're being honest with ourselves. But I do love instant one-hit KO on anything. Just saying. That's pretty redonkulous. Adore this. Huge fan. But I also don't think it's going to work very much. I love the idea of having this Stage 2 that just KOs anything. And let's face it, you're most of the time going to be trading like 1 prize for 2 or 3. Yeah, a lot of potential here. It's never actually going to work because it's a Stage 2 that's 2 energy. But a man can dream. And also, while we're talking fighting, how about Glamora? 2 energy 60, nah mate, nobody cares. But single energy, 20 damage, plus poison. And during your opponent's next turn, they can't attach energy from their hand to the defending Pokemon. Yes, they can attach to bench Pokemon. Yes, they can switch the active out of the active to the bench and attach them and get them back into the active. But are they always going to be able to? They're not always going to have the resources to pull this off, and that means that you are going to frustrate them for several turns. And remember that Glamora EX is still a thing. I've seen it being hyped a little bit at the moment with all of the wide bench decks running around right now. You know, people are using Area 0 Wonder Depths, so everybody wants to use Glamora EX to put your opponent down to 3 bench Pokemon. So if you're playing Glamora EX anyway, you can combine it with this, but then again, Glamora EX only works in the active, so maybe you don't want to pair it with a non-Glamora EX. That really seems to work more as a quad deck to get the most out of it. Either way, there is at least a little bit of potential here, and this makes me kind of happy. We have a new Indeedee here. It's just a terrible attack, but when you play it from your hand to your bench, you can heal 30 damage and a status condition from your active Pokemon. It's not that relevant now, but we have had in the past paralysis decks. Things like Excelgor back in the day that would just work by leaving you paralyzed like every turn, and it sucked. So here, if those decks ever come around again, and those decks tend to be combined with Trainer Lock as well, that's generally what people try and go for. Excelgor certainly was. So if, and it's quite specific, but it has happened in the past a few times, if your opponent is combining special conditions and item lock, you're not able to play switching cards and things of that nature. So things like this, a Pokemon that you are allowed to play under item lock, that you can then kind of pop down to get rid of that special condition, does actually become kind of an enticing prospect. I don't think it's great now, but there is a theoretical future where there are decks around where this would actually help very, very much indeed. Although in that theoretical future, people are going to hate this card because it's going to ruin that whole deck. Never mind. And let's finish off with one item card. Antoine has called it the Detective Set, which, yeah, that seems to work quite nicely. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put them back on the top of your deck in any order, or shuffle them and put them back on the bottom of your deck. I like this. I actually like this a lot. And the reason, very simply, is 56 card deck. Make a 56 card deck and then 4 of these. And then really what you're doing is using this as a little boost of consistency, because it is. Because if the card you need next, a supporter card or whatever, is in the next 3 cards, you leave it on top. If it's not, you just put all those cards at the bottom of your deck and you don't know you're getting a supporter, but you do know that you've increased your chances. And I actually like it. This is only for speed decks. It's only going to work in speed decks. But if you want to make a very pared down speed deck where you are just trying to do one thing as consistently as possible and you want to play as few cards as possible, this is going to help you in that kind of deck. And for that reason, I think this is cool. I'm going to end up playing this in a deck at some point because I love making these speed decks. Right, there we go. That was a lot of new cards. But we've talked about all these new cards. Rotom, full-on busted. People are going to love it. Durant, actually, I think, could have genuine potential here. And I personally adore Center Scorch. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Good us! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shout-outs on the channel like the lovely Eric Ridgway, who's been a supporter of ours for a long time now and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.